A few years ago I did that challenge where you draw your character in a bunch of different art styles and the results were a bit... interesting? So, let's give it another go with the same character. Both the character, Damien, and the style that I draw him in have of course changed a lot over the last 3 years, or at least I hope so. Namely that since a lot of the styles that I'm doing are from animated works, they're a lot simpler than my normal illustrative style. Which means mine has differences in line weight, and the cell shading has multiple colours in it, so it'll be interesting to see how the level of detail changes throughout each piece. Steven Universe is a show that had a death grip on me and my sketchbook for several years, so for a long time my art style was just trying to replicate its art style. But here, I didn't want to just draw the exact same design but in different art styles. I wanted to really think about how the designers would interpret Damien as an idea into the show. So I took reference from Sour Cream for the head shape and body type, and Amethyst for the big old poofy hair. And since Steven Universe tries to focus a lot on shape language, I really tried to exemplify that, like, Damien's a bit of a beanpole, but he's got this big poofy hair and it creates a lot of, like, nice contrast. Speaking of the hair, for a while I wasn't exactly sure how to do the colour change because I wanted to look at the really minute details of how the styles do changes in colour. Like, are there lines in between to indicate the colour, or can colours just change? So I had to look at different characters to see how they did that. And in the end, Steven Universe is kind of inconsistent with it. Some do, some don't. So I went without because that felt closer. And then when I had the same thing with the freckles, I remember Smoky Quartz. She has freckles, so I could use her as reference. And those are not lined, so I went for that and did the same thing. I just took the countdown on how many there were by a lot and made them more big triangle shapes. Because, once again, shape language. Next, we have a far simpler art style, that being that of Adventure Time. Originally, I struggled to think where I would find references for this, because Damien's just a normal human, and, you know, there's kind of not a lot of those. Then I remembered Fiona and Cake exists, obviously, so there you go. And in part of it being simple, I had to make a decision that I was not ready for, which was I had to remove Damien's freckles. I couldn't see a single human design that had anything on their face at all. So it had to be done. So sorry, Damien. And lastly, for part 1, we have Kipo and the Age of Wonder Beasts, a show that more people need to watch. Watch it, please, please, please. Anyway, I chose Kipo because I like how unique its art style is, really leaning into all those like jagged edges and using a few straight lines where one curved line would have done the trick. It's also a little bit more detailed than the other styles that we've done, which meant for this one I could finally add some shading. Though I did have to pull myself back at a few points because I wanted to add it everywhere like I normally would, but it was really only in a few places. Big areas of the hair and under the chin. Also very minute detail, but going forward, if it applies, then I want to change the design a bit just to fit in the world and actually make sense. So I gave Damien his bag. You can't see it besides the strap, but he has it. Got all of his apocalypse gear in there. Every now and then I completely change the way that I draw Damien and change little parts of his design. Normally this is great, but less so given it happened right in the middle of drawing this. So time to update Damien to his new design, I guess. Now the thing about making a character for a webcomic is that you need to be able to draw them very quickly, because you need to do it like so many times. And the stuff I've drawn him lately has been not fast at all. In fact, I spent hours labouring over his character sheet, which is not a good idea. So in general, he's just a lot simpler. Also, his skin's a little bit less grey, because he just looked a bit sickly before was all. Something I've noticed with these art style challenges is that people will just take a character and draw them exactly like the protagonist and not how they would actually design their character. Because sure, when you think Gravity Falls, you think Mabel and Dipper, but Damien's a bit too old to be designed like them. So I took some reference from Wendy and her friends. I mean, they're slightly older than what I imagine Damien is, but it's fine. They definitely work a lot better than the kids would. Though, I did give him Mabel's hair, because I can. I did give Damien a more awkward stance, because I imagine if he was in the show, they'd probably go more into, like, the awkwardness of just dealing with certain things as a 14-year-old trans guy. You know, if Disney wasn't involved and Alex Ash could do whatever he wanted. Speaking of shows that Disney has meddled with, The Owl House. Once again, none of the main cast really fit for Damien. Closest would probably be Hunter, but it didn't really feel right. Then I realised, besides the main cast, some of the humans do go pretty different with the head shape. Then I realised lanky old Gerbo would actually work quite well as a base for Damien. Though try it as I might, I could not find any character with freckles. There were characters with stuff on their faces, like Hunter Scar, but it just... nowhere. It's shocking how many shows just don't have anything like that at all. Closest I could find was Emera when we see her true look revealed when she takes off her, like, magic stone thingy. I don't remember what it's called. And she has pimples, so I guess I could use that as reference. And for Damien's top lip, I just took it from Luce. The Disney style was the one where I most felt like I needed to prove myself. The original still haunts me. So this time, we are actually going to use references, because Young Me did not use references. They just winged it, and use references, kids. After making a base by mixing Aladdin with the goofiness of Prince Eric in the third movie, if you know what I mean, you know what I mean.
I forbid you to take another step down these stairs!
Okay.
But his hair I struggled with. Now Damien naturally has very curly hair. He just straightens the hell out of it. Because this boy does not care about the health of his hair. So for a more detailed style like Disney's had, Damien's hair would look a little bit more nuanced, rather than just looking textured or wavy. But there isn't really anyone who fits that quota exactly. I mean, there's barely anyone with any sorts of textured hair, but there was that Tiana ad a while ago, so we know how they would draw curls, and so I just combined it with Ariel's hair. It's got the big, voluminous aspect that Damien's hair has. And the face was just a pretty easy case of scaling things up or down when I realised I made them the wrong size, but it wasn't actually as difficult as I assumed it would be, given how much I struggled with it the previous time. Finally, we have Avatar, and look, I mentioned this sort of with the Kipo one, but I cannot imagine contemporary clothing in any Avatar stuff. I don't care if the next Avatar is set in modern day, it won't feel right, so complete redesign for Damien. Did have to give it a little think about what type of bending he would have. Almost considered non-bender, but no, waterbender. Unfortunately, I couldn't really think of a way to work in the orange of his shirt without just making it look completely non-water tribe, so we forwent the orange. But the outfit came together pretty nice, so... Also had to figure out how they do water in the show, because it looks very good, and my effects drawing is not quite as good. Also, I showed off a bit more of the body here than I did in the previous ones, but I wanted a cool bending pose, okay? Okay, let me have this. While the Avatar style was an exploration in clothing and time periods, this time we're shaking up the species. That's right, Damien for Sona, yay! Which I have actually drawn before, and at the time I went with Lynx, which still feels right for some reason, so... Though where an actual Persona typically has bright colours, bizarre shapes and patterns, Beastars is basically just real animals, so... And as excited as I was to do some fairy art, I actually really was interested in the hands. There's so many close-up shots of Legoshi's hands, and they're just really good looking. Also, this time I figured I'd actually show everyone the reference boards that I made for each piece. A little bit of insight into what I was looking at. When trying to think of a Ghibli character that really fit Damien's energy, my first instinctual thought was Lupin III, from Lupin III Castle of Cagliostro, and several other things. Then I remembered, that's not a Ghibli movie. But it was Miyazaki's first theatrical venture, and it's... I mean, look, if you love Ghibli and you have not watched this movie, find it and watch it. It is a treat. You don't need to know anything about Lupin III or the show. I haven't seen it, I probably should, but something I've always enjoyed about the Ghibli style is the hair. Just the shapes that make it up are all very nice, so it's fun to do a big old thing with Damien's, because Ghibli characters, at least the ones whose hair is still styled like this, don't really have big hairs. They tend to cut off at shoulder length, so I just had to sort of fudge it, you know? I mean, it's probably what it looked like. In these, I haven't actually spoken much about Damien himself, so I guess I should give a little bit of background. Damien is the main character to a Pokemon-based webcomic that I've been working on for 5 years now? Jesus. And, I haven't actually started it yet, but I swear, it is coming really soon. There's a chapter 1 script, there's a bunch of stuff mapped out. So it's coming soon. Hoenn Horizons on Tapas and Webtoon. Eventually. Anyway, my point being is that for the final 2 styles, I wanted to do the Pokemon anime, but it's changed a lot over the years, so I thought I'd do a nice compare and contrast. The originals, of course, being iconic, it's nostalgic to so many fans, including me, despite the fact it came out far before I was born. And though there were a lot of controversies when it first came out, I love the Sun and Moon art style. It's so silly and expressive and pretty simple, actually. It's a lot less jagged, shapes are rounded off, and it works for the style of Pokemon. At least I think so. So for these ones, it only felt right to include Damien's starter himself, Pyro. Though regrettably, I did have to draw him on model for these, because it made sense. I couldn't make him all fluffy. I tried to show the extra energy that Sun and Moon's has in the pose. I also felt like the Sun and Moon style had a lot more variations in design. A lot of the characters in the original season had basically the exact same head shape, except for Brock. But if you look at the main cast of kids in Sun and Moon, they all have very different shapes. Which a lot of this comes from the fact that, you know, designs made on the Game Boy are going to be a lot less defined than those that were made on a 3DS, which means that they just had more varied things to pull from. Either way, it meant I elongated Damien's features a little bit to look more like Yahweh, because Damien is 14 as opposed to Ash's eternal 10. And at long last, we are done! This is something I've wanted to redo for so many years, and I'm really glad I have now, because this is something I can really be proud of. Also, it's a great example of how much art can improve over time. I mean, my style and the way that I draw Damien even changed from the beginning of this challenge to the end. I've made plenty of videos about the comic characters in silly ways.
Your dreams, I literally only have nightmares.
Cell phone! I threw it on the ground!
Crying about snakes.
They don't have any arms.
But would you guys like to see a proper story-based video about Damien? Maybe a trailer, a taster of the comic that is to come? Because Hoenn Horizons has been a passion project for, like I said, a very long time, so it'd be awesome if you guys could join the ride with me.